Chapter 1. The context of Roman rule. To understand the establishment of Judea as a Roman province in 6 AD, we must first examine the historical context leading up to this momentous decision. Judea had been under Roman influence for decades, with the region oscillating between local rule and direct Roman control. The subjugation of Judea began in earnest in 63 BCE when Pompey conquered the region, integrating it into the Roman sphere of influence. This initial conquest introduced a complex relationship between Rome and the local Jewish population, characterized by a mix of resistance, accommodation, and cultural exchange. By the time of the Roman annexation in 6 AD, Judea was a melting pot of religious beliefs, cultural practices, and political aspirations, with various factions vying for power and influence. The death of King Herod the Great in 4 BCE marked a significant turning point. His kingdom was divided among his sons, but the instability that followed prompted the Romans to assume more direct control. By 6 AD, the political climate in Judea was fraught with tension, as the local populace grappled with their identity amidst the overarching authority of Rome. Chapter 2. The Roman decision to annex Judea. In response to the ongoing unrest and administrative challenges, the Roman authorities decided to establish Judea as a province. This move was driven by a desire for greater control and stability in the region. The Roman Empire aimed to integrate Judea more fully into its administrative framework, standardizing governance and taxation while suppressing dissent. The decision was not made lightly. Roman officials, led by the governor of Syria, Quirinius, recognized that direct rule would enable them to impose their will more effectively. The Roman Senate debated the merits of annexation, weighing the economic benefits of controlling Judea's resources against the potential for increased resistance from the local populace. Ultimately, the decision to establish Judea as a province was approved, and Quirinius was appointed to oversee the transition. His mandate included implementing a census to assess the population for taxation purposes, a move that would ignite fierce opposition among the Jews. Chapter 3. The census and its consequences. The implementation of the census in 6 AD marked a critical juncture in the relationship between Rome and the Jewish people. The census was perceived as an affront to Jewish identity and religious observance. Jews believed that being counted among the Gentiles was a desecration of their faith, a violation of their covenant with God. Quirinius's census required every male head of household to register, leading to widespread unrest. The Jewish populace, already discontent with Roman rule, viewed this directive as yet another form of oppression. The anger was palpable, and the streets of Jerusalem buzzed with the fervor of discontent. Local leaders, rabbis, and influential figures spoke out against the census, urging the people to resist compliance. The backlash against the census galvanized various factions within Judea. The Zealots, a radical group committed to resisting Roman authority, saw this as a rallying cry. They began organizing protests and inciting rebellion against the Roman authorities, calling for the liberation of Judea from foreign control. Chapter 4. Rising tensions in Jerusalem. As the census deadline approached, tensions reached a boiling point in Jerusalem. The city, a religious and cultural hub for the Jewish people, became a flashpoint for conflict. The Zealots, emboldened by the widespread resentment against Roman rule, intensified their efforts to mobilize the populace. In the streets, pamphlets circulated, urging citizens to refuse registration and resist Roman authority. The message resonated deeply, especially among the poorer segments of society, who felt the brunt of heavy taxation and the burden of Roman governance. The tensions were further exacerbated by the arrival of Roman soldiers tasked with enforcing compliance. In response to the growing unrest, Quirinius ordered increased military presence in the region to quell dissent. Roman troops patrolled the streets of Jerusalem, often engaging in confrontations with local residents. The atmosphere was charged with hostility, as the Jewish populace grappled with their sense of identity in the face of foreign domination. Chapter 5. The role of the Jewish elite. Amidst the chaos, the Jewish elite found themselves in a precarious position. The aristocracy, composed of wealthy landowners, priests, and influential merchants, had a complicated relationship with the Romans. Many members of the elite had benefited from Roman patronage, enjoying privileges that allowed them to maintain their status. However, the growing unrest posed a threat to their interests. While some members of the elite sided with the Romans, hoping to maintain their power and privileges, Others sympathized with the plight of the common people and the burgeoning resistance movements. This division within the Jewish elite created a rift in the community, as debates raged about how to respond to Roman rule. Some argued for cooperation, advocating for compromise to secure better conditions for their fellow Jews. Others aligned themselves with the Zealots, calling for outright rebellion and the establishment of an independent Jewish state. The clash of perspectives among the elite further complicated the already volatile situation in Judea. Chapter 6. The Zealots. A new force emerges. The Zealots emerged as a formidable force in the struggle against Roman authority. This militant group believed in the necessity of armed resistance to liberate Judea from foreign domination. Their ideology was rooted in a deep-seated conviction that divine intervention would ultimately support their cause. Marrying religious fervor with revolutionary zeal, the Zealots drew support from various strata of society. They attracted followers among the rural poor, urban laborers, and those disillusioned by the political machinations of the elite. Their message of resistance resonated powerfully, igniting a spirit of rebellion among those who felt oppressed by Roman rule. As the Zealots organized themselves, they began launching raids against Roman troops and collaborating with other resistance factions. The early acts of rebellion, though small in scale, signaled the emergence of a growing insurgency that would challenge Roman authority in the years to come. Chapter 7. Quirinius's response. Faced with escalating violence and unrest, Quirinius sought to assert Roman authority over Judea. He understood that failing to quell the rebellion would undermine the credibility of Roman governance and threaten stability in the region. Quirinius launched a series of military campaigns aimed at dismantling the Zealot movement and restoring order. Roman legions marched into key towns, enforcing compliance with the census and suppressing dissent with overwhelming force. As tensions escalated, the conflict between the occupiers and the occupied reached a fever pitch. In Jerusalem, skirmishes erupted between Roman soldiers and Jewish insurgents, further inflaming public sentiment against Roman rule. The Roman response was brutal. Reports of harsh reprisals against suspected insurgents circulated, deepening the animosity towards the occupying forces. The heavy-handed tactics employed by Quirinius only served to fuel the flames of resistance, as the Zealots gained support from those who had previously been indifferent to the conflict. Chapter 8. The clash of cultures. As Roman authority tightened its grip on Judea, the clash of cultures became increasingly pronounced. Roman customs, laws, and practices began to permeate daily life, causing a significant cultural upheaval among the Jewish populace. Religious practices were particularly affected.